Welcome to the deep dive.
All right.
So today we're going deep into Ethiopia's forests.
Yeah.
Places that are, really vital to the planet, but also to the people who live there. I mean, just think about it. They're these huge carbon sinks, right?
Right.
They help keep the soil, intact.
Yeah.
Help regulate those water cycles.
Right.
Livelihoods, depend on them.
Absolutely.
But I think, our listeners probably know this already, but there's a big problem there.
Yeah.
Deforestation.
Big problem.
And we've actually gathered a lot of information for this from international organizations, the Ethiopian government itself, and some really in-depth research to try to understand, what's really at the core of this story.
Absolutely.
And I think the mission for us in this deep dive is to kind of pull out those most important insights about deforestation in Ethiopia for you,
right?
But without getting too bogged down in the details.
Yeah.
But along the way, I think we can highlight some really surprising facts.
Absolutely. And I think for you, the listener, the sheer scale of historical forest loss in Ethiopia, I think, is a critical starting point to wrap your head around.
Right.
Early 20th century, over 40% of the country was forested.
Wow.
By 2000, that had plummeted to somewhere between 2.36 and 4%.
Seriously.
So that's 98% loss in just half a century.
That's unbelievable.
And then between 1990 and 2010 alone, the average annual loss was around 140,900 hectares.
So, okay, let's unpack that a little for our listeners.
Yeah.
I mean, that rate of decline is unbelievable.
It is.
So where does Ethiopia stand right now in terms of forest cover?
Well, by 2020, forest cover had seen some recovery.
Okay.
Reaching approximately 14 to 15.11%.
All right.
Which translates to about 15.5 to 16.7 million hectares.
Okay.
However, the pressure hasn't stopped just in 2023. Another 78.6 thousand hectares of natural forest were lost.
Wow.
Releasing, a substantial amount of CO2. And if you look at the broader picture from 2001 to 2023, total tree cover loss exceeds 500,000 hectares. What's particularly concerning is that includes a significant loss of nearly 100,000 hectares of humid primary forest.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like different organizations give slightly different figures.
Yeah.
Why would the World Bank report one number and the FAO another?
That's a really important point to understand.
Yeah.
The fact that organizations like the World Bank and the FAO, have slightly different figures for forest cover tells us something crucial.
Yeah.
It highlights that even defining what constitutes a forest can be complex and can depend on what metrics are being prioritized. Things like canopy density, minimum area tree height.
I see.
And these differences can actually impact policy decisions and how we perceive the success of conservation efforts.
Right.
So it's a reminder that we need to look beyond the headline numbers.
Right.
And understand the underlying definitions. The consistent message, though, across all the data is one of significant loss.
Okay, so what are the main things driving this deforestation? Like what's at the heart of this massive environmental change?
Primarily, it boils down to rapid population growth.
Okay.
And for you, the listener, that means increased demand for farmland.
Sure.
To produce food, more grazing land for livestock.
Okay.
And a huge need for fuel wood and charcoal for energy.
Yeah.
This pressure is often intensified by a lack of clear and effective land use policies and also insecure land tenure.
So what does that mean, insecure land tenure?
Insecure land tenure for you means that local communities or individuals may not have clear or guaranteed rights to the land that they live on or use.
Right.
And this can discourage long-term sustainable management practices because there's less incentive to invest in the land if you're worried about losing access to it.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Economic factors like poverty and food insecurity also play a role, pushing people to rely on forest resources just for survival. Additionally, we're also seeing growing pressure from commercial agriculture with the expansion of coffee and tea plantations into forest areas.
Yeah, and what are the consequences of all this for the natural world when so much forest is lost?
Right.
What's the impact on Ethiopia's diverse ecosystems?
Well, the impact on biodiversity is severe.
Okay.
Ethiopia is home to incredibly diverse ecosystems.
Right.
With, numerous unique species.
Mm-hmm.
Deforestation leads to habitat loss and fragmentation, directly threatening these species.
Right.
What's fascinating here is the case of wild coffee arabica in southwestern Ethiopia.
Okay.
These are the original populations.
Oh, wow.
And they're vital for genetic diversity.
Right.
And they're critically endangered due to habitat loss.
Oh, no.
Projections suggest they could disappear within 27 years.
Really?
Carrying an estimated economic impact of between 0.4 and 1.5 billion US dollars annually.
Wow. That really brings the economic dimension into sharp focus.
Yeah.
Beyond just, losing these species.
Right.
What are some of the broader environmental consequences for Ethiopia?
Soil erosion is a major threat.
Okay.
Forests anchor the soil.
Yeah.
And when they're cleared, the topsoil washes away,
Right.
damaging agriculture, causing land degradation.
Yeah.
Deforestation also disrupts vital water cycles.
Okay.
So you see reduced rainfall, increased surface runoff,
Right.
more frequent and intense flooding in wet seasons, and greater water scarcity during dry periods,
Yeah.
ultimately contributing to desertification in some areas.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we can't forget that forests are essential carbon sinks. They're destruction releases that stored carbon into the atmosphere, contributing to climate change,
Right.
which has a disproportionately large impact on vulnerable countries like Ethiopia.
It's kind of a challenging picture, isn't it?
It is.
But are there initiatives underway to try and reverse this trend?
Yes, there are significant reforestation and conservation efforts underway.
Okay, good.
For you, the listener, to note, the Ethiopian Green Legacy Initiative aims to plant an ambitious 50 billion trees. There are also programs like the Oromia Forested Landscape Program, supported by the World Bank, which emphasizes community involvement in forest management. And we've seen successful examples like the Humbo Assisted Natural Regeneration Project.
Oh, that's great.
Organizations like the FAO and the UNEP are also providing crucial support for restoration and sustainable land management practices.
Oh,
And there are national strategies and plans in place with the goal of increasing forest cover.
so despite those huge historical losses
Right.
and those ongoing challenges, it sounds like there are efforts being made to protect and restore
Yes.
Ethiopia's forests.
Precisely. While the scale of the deforestation issue is significant, these conservation initiatives offer a crucial pathway forward.
Thinking about our deep dive today, I think it's clear that deforestation in Ethiopia carries substantial economic costs.
Right.
Like we were talking about the potential loss of wild coffee.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder what other, perhaps less obvious economic and social costs might deforestation be imposing on Ethiopia and the wider world.
Right.
And for you, our listener, what further questions does this deep dive raise about that complex balancing act between environmental preservation and the very real pressures of socioeconomic development? It's a lot to consider long after our conversation ends.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.